Hello everybody, welcome to Marketing Analytics course. This is week 2 that is going on, and this is the session 2, which will be a smaller session than the other sessions that we have taken. And here we are discussing about what consumers want, and this is Dr. Shagata Chatterjee from VGSOM IIT Kharagpur who is taking this session. So, what consumers want, I discussed about how you can use consumer review data, where consumer express themselves out in actually finding out what they are asking for. But there is another method which you can also use, which is called conjoint analysis. The major goal is to identify what consumers want as usual, and we actually what we do is we break options available into a combination of multiple attributes. We make sure that it is a combination of multiple attributes and find out how customers value those attributes. So, each of the offering that we have, we break it down and then see that each particular parts how customers are valuing those attributes, and find out then a combination of those attributes and combination of the valuations of the consumers as well to create the overall solution. So, we will come to that. This is all textual things, but we will come to that what exactly this mean. So, the very basic thing that a customer want to do is to get the maximum consumer surplus. He wants to maximize his consumer surplus. So, these are economics, microeconomics 101, where he gets certain utility or value from an offering when he purchases that, and when he purchases that he also pays a price. So, utility in the monetary term minus price is something is probably the net consumer surplus that he is getting. So, value minus price. So, he wants to maximize that, as simple as that. Now, to create value for the customer, you have to increase your cost. The more value you will create, the more cost the company will incur. On the other hand, you cannot charge more price. So, if you want to make the customers happy, if you want that value minus price to be high, either you can increase value or you can decrease price. But the problem with decreasing price a lot is that price affects your profit function. Your profit function is demand, which is a function of price, into price minus cost. Now, if your price is very high, your demand will come down. So, you cannot keep the price very high. On the other hand, if you increase your value, your cost will go up. So, your price has to be higher than your cost. So, then there is a dilemma that we have as a customer. So, do I increase value? Do I increase price? What do I do? If I increase value, then cost will go up. If I increase cost, then price will go up. If I increase price, then demand will come down, and I do not know whether the profit maximizes or not. So, I have to find out a best solution which will give customers the highest value at my lowest cost, and I can sell it at the right price, not the highest price, not the lowest price, but the right price. So, this is something, all this combination of information becomes difficult to find, to be able to find out in other options, quantitative techniques available. So, what are the techniques available? We will discuss about that first. So, what are the various ways in which I find out what customer values? So, that value minus price, that value is a function of what, and then based on that I can also find out what is the willingness to pay, how much is the right price. When I say that right price, what is that right price, and I can also find out that whether I can give that particular product at that particular price or not. So, whether the cost is reasonable or not, something like that. So, the demand side of the story, that means to find out that value as a function of what comes from market research. So, we actually market research is something where we actually go to the customers and ask various questions, and there are various ways of asking those questions. You can ask in a qualitative way, you can do a focus group discussion, and people can discuss about what they want, what they do not want, what they like, what they dislike. You can capture their talking, and then you can do a text analysis or content analysis on whatever they are saying, probably a little bit of emotion analysis, tone analysis also, to find out whether there is something kind of emotions that are coming out of their verbal communication. That is one way. There can be other ways. You can go to the review website and find out the text and etc., but these are all qualitative techniques. Now, in a quantitative technique, you can do certain kind of regression that we discussed in the last class, but still there can be options. As I told, there can be options which is not even there in the market, customers have not experienced them. So, customers have not reviewed about them and you do not have information about them. So, what to do at those kind of cases? So, market research will also have its own, classical market research will also have its own I would say limitation in finding out the demand side story. That means, value is a function of what, that kind of the story. So, then you have to, in whatever way, you have to find out the combination what is needed, what combination of various attributes that is needed, and then the next question is whether it can be delivered by you or not. That is the third question. So, the major problem comes in the first question itself, that how to do the market research to find out value as a function of what. Now, if I try to break a product, I told that we generally break a product or an offering into multiple attributes, and we see that the offering is a combination of multiple attributes available. So, just close your eyes. I have given an example of let us say a laptop. A laptop, when you generally what you do is you close your eyes, or probably you ask 10 people and ask them that what is something that they consider when they go and buy a laptop. For example, the variables that you consider and might be depending on your physical structure. For example, I remember I had a friend, very close friend, but whose height was short and he was a woman. C, in this case, she was a woman. So, she did not like a product which was heavy, because something that is heavy will actually affect her back and there will be backache and etc. So, her preference was something which is not heavy. So, the weight of a laptop becomes an important variable for certain kind of people. Then for other people some other variables are important, and you have to find out from a qualitative study that which of these variables are important. For example, here I have listed down that let us say brand, the processor, the RAM size, I would say the monitor size, again the price. For some people probably the storage is also important. For some other people probably let us say the whether certain kind of graphics card is there is also important, and etc. So, there can be so many aspects. As I told, the weight is also important for some people for a laptop. So, all of these things are important, and these are certain levels or values, or I would say the exact values of various features that has been listed. So, I can think a laptop as a combination of something which does a little bit of processing, where the processor is 4 gigahertz, the RAM is of 1 GB, and then it has 21 inches of monitor. And so, monitor, if I am talking about monitor, then it is a PC, not a laptop, but you can have screens of 16 inches or something like that, 14 inches, etc. And the price is that, and the brand name is that. All of this combines and creates a PC or a laptop. You can think about something else. For example, you let us say thinking about a mobile phone, a smartphone. What are the various aspects that you think is important for a smartphone? So, let us say if I just list it down for you, for me, I am talking about me, and you can check about others. So, for me, the first important thing that comes up is that let us say what kind of Android version it is, or whether it is Android or not, the first thing, and if it is Android, what is the Android version, and then probably the price is something that is very important for me, and then the size, the screen size. If it is very big, then it will not fit in my pocket. If it is very small, then I cannot write on it. So, size matters, something like that. And then let us say the make, that means the brand is something that is also important for me, and then probably the very important factor is probably the camera, and whether camera is then also rear camera and front camera. So, it can be two different categories, also two different aspects. So, camera front and camera rear. All of these things are important. So, there are 6 aspects. So, you can chalk it down and you can chalk it down for other guys also and find out the 5 to 6 factors or features which are mostly told by most of the people. So, that is the qualitative part of the study. Then comes, so why I cannot just ask the direct questions? I can ask that, okay, so if you have told that brand is important, or let us say you have told is processor speed is important, or let us say the size of the mobile phone is important, screen size, why can't you just directly ask these questions that which one do you like? Okay, let us say Samsung, and how much is the processor, how much screen size do you like? Okay, up to 4 inches. And let us say you ask me that which particular Android version you like, okay, Lollipop or KitKat, or something which is more more latest, I would say, latest, that is all. And how much storage capacity do you like? Okay, 64 GB as much as possible, more than 64 GB at least. What is the RAM size? Okay, more than 4 GB at least, or something like that. And then you ask me, let us say, what is the price? Less than 20,000 or 30,000 rupees. So, when I say these things, these are all vague answers. This is not concrete answers. It does not say that, okay, if instead of 40,000, if I give it in 20,000, how much is your willingness to buy it? Or if means exactly what percentage it will increase? Or if I say that, okay, if I give a combination of your non-preferred brand with your preferred RAM size, will you be more interested to buy that versus your preferred brand and non-preferred RAM size? So, how those things actually interact with each other? I have no idea when I ask those things. So, often these answers are trivial and unenlightening. You do not get any new information, any good information out of this method. Another method, another problem. So, let us say I want to know that which of the features are important, which features, not the feature level, but which feature is more important, whether brand is more important or processor is more important or RAM is more important. So, you go and ask, in most of the cases when we go to the survey, we ask in a 1 to 7 point scale, 1 means least important, 7 means most important, you give them a rating, or sometimes we ask them to rank. I ask person A to rank, person B to rank, and we find out the average of those ranks. The lower the average, the better, or the higher the ranking, the better. Now, let us say you get a result like this. I have written it in text, you will get a bar chart. So, processor is 6.2, the brand is 6.2, processor is 5.8, RAM is 5.9 and so on. But the key question comes up is, so what? So what? Then if I get this kind of a thing, what will I do after that? There is no actionable. So, if I know that RAM is more important than processor, but the difference is 0.1, I know that, okay, I will focus on RAM than processor. But how much? Will I make the RAM probably 32 GB or 64 GB or 128 GB, or how much? How much importance I should focus on? I do not know. So, all of these things cannot be answered by the classical market research methods that we generally use, and that is what the conjoint analysis comes up. Conjoint, the dictionary term is joined together or combined, and the marketer's catchphrase is features considered jointly. So, this is something that is very important, features considered. So, considered comes from their con comes and jointly from their joint comes. It has started around early 1970s is where this conjoint analysis earlier started. And what are the applications? The applications are learning more about your potential customer segments. You want to know, you want to break the customers, what they are like, what they dislike, something like that. It can be heavily used in new product development. It can be also used in, if you introduce a new product, what will be the market share, and you can also find out the optimal positioning of the products. And I will actually show you in a case study what are the various things that you can do with conjoint analysis. What are the steps? The first step is obviously which product you want to do the conjoint analysis on. Then once you know the product, you have to decide that what are the attributes, what are the various features, and what are the levels of those features, based on which you will create the combinations. So, you will create combinations in the third step and then show the combinations to the customers. Your sample, it is a market research method. So, there will be samples. So, you will go and ask them and they will give either rating or ranking, some way of giving their preference to those combinations. Now, you collect those preference data, analyze, do your analysis, and then from that analysis you can create lots of different kind of interpretations. As I told, the usage are of different places. So, you can do lots of different kind of interpretations and we will talk about that one by one. Now, the first step is, first you decide the product and service. In this case, probably let us say the product is laptop, and when you are doing with laptop, you have to find out what are the attributes. Now, choosing the attributes and choosing the attribute levels are also very important here. How? So, let us say I want to choose the attributes, that is the first thing. So, I have to choose such attributes which are independent to each other. You cannot choose attributes which are dependent with each other. For example, let us say the weight and the screen size and the probably the size of the particular laptop, the 21 inches or 40 inches are related. So, you cannot say that okay, I will give a 21 or let us say 16 inches which is very least weight. That kind of combination might not have a meaning. So, you might either take the screen size or take the, or if you are saying, if you at all are saying that okay, the width, I would say the screen width and the weight are different, they are not related, you have to also talk about the thickness of that particular laptop. So, whether it is very thin or very thick or something like that. So, then it is different, but if for a general kind of laptop which are in a range of let us say around 30,000 up to 30,000, there might be very high correlation between the size and the weight. So, then if they are very highly correlated or if it is a categorical data, you can use chi-square test to check their relationships. If they are not independent, as simple as that, you cannot take that. So, you should take those attributes which are independent to each other, that is number 1. Number 2 is you have to choose those attributes which has varying levels. So, you choose an attributes which has no variety. Let us say you are talking about smartphones and most of the smartphones let us say are Android and so let us say Android and then Mac, okay. Or so if the processor, the OS system, operating system is not different, there are not multiple levels available. For example, if the brand name is Apple, you only have Mac, you do not have Windows. So, you cannot create a combination which is Apple and then, so in that case either you choose the brand name or you choose the operator, the OS name, and because those kind of combinations becomes difficult. So, you have to make sure that there are varying levels are available and labels are unambiguous and labels are mutually exclusive. What is mutually exclusive? That means that let us say 50 GB and 1 TB should not. So, if it is 50 GB, then it is not 1 TB. If it is 1 TB, it is not 50 GB. It cannot be something which can be both actually. There cannot be an option which can be both. For example, let us say I cannot say that I have the 3 levels of color is let us say red, pink and red and pink both, or red and middle of red and pink. Then that red and pink has to be a different from red and pink. So, it cannot be a combination of two, or both can happen. This kind of things should not be there. So, all your labels should be mutually exclusive, either option A or option B or option C. Either of these 3 things should happen. And then comes the labels of the brand which has to be unambiguous. So, you cannot say popular and unpopular. What is popular for one guy might be unpopular for another sample. So, you have to give the name. You have to say HP, Lenovo or Dell. You cannot say popular, unpopular. You cannot say high, medium, low, because what is high for you, what is high for me might be different. So, you have to give exact, unambiguous, concrete labels for each of the attributes. Once you do that, you create combinations. Now, it is very tempting for the people that to create use lots of attributes and lots of attribute labels. So, just see, if you use 3 attributes and each of the attribute has 3 labels like this, you will have 27 combinations, 3 into 3 into 3. So, the more attributes you check and more attribute levels you take, the more number of combinations you get. It is good to have lots of combinations, but then analyzing them becomes very difficult. You have to collect lots of data to analyze that. So, that is why we say that up to 3 to 5 levels, up to 3 to 5 attributes, not more than that, and make sure that the number of attribute levels are more or less balanced. So, each attribute should have similar number of levels. Brand has 6 levels and let us say RAM has 2 levels, that is not something that is good. Now, I have just listed down 9 of them and there are 18 other combinations. So, you have to also see that the combinations are meaningful. As I told in the last discussion that Apple and Windows OS is not a meaningful combination, that is not available, Apple brand and Windows OS. So, you have to make sure that the combinations that you are creating out of those attributes and attribute levels are also meaningful. So, here for space constraint I could not list down all the 27 combinations, but there are total 27 combinations that gets created. Now, the next job is to show them and collect data. There are 3 methods, one is ranking based, one is rating based and another third is choice based, and based on which method you are choosing, the analysis techniques are different. In the next video, we will talk about that. We will do a case study and we will see that how this kind of methods and corresponding tools, statistical tools can be used to get FATCA Super Smart. So, we will stop here for this particular session and we will come back with a case study in the next video. Thank you.